Here we go, baby. Little bit of talking, hitting 12. Ow! A little bit more talking when we do the headphone switcheroo. I hurt myself. Seriously, that hurt.
That's my favourite thing.
It really hurt. You know when you just get the bone in the wrong position?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but it's just funny. People hurting themselves is always amusing to me. Because there's just an element of like, I don't know, there's just an element of like, I don't know, it's not schadenfreude, it's like, when someone's responsible for their own pain, it's just funny because you just think that person must be going, God, if I just slightly done it differently, I wouldn't be in pain right now. Do you know what I mean? Like this is there's a regret to it that I enjoy.
If my hands had been in a slightly different position, it would have been okay.
yeah, that's all I'm thinking.
Very. It's upsetting to be. I'll be honest. Your reaction hurts more than my hand.
I'm sorry, Chris. Oh dear, dear. Should we do a podcast?
Let's do a podcast.
Calm, breathe, and podcast. Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar The Last Airbender. I'm Dan and I am joined as always by the late airbender himself, Chris Billingham. Chris, are my hands hurt, Billingham?
I mean, you got to put that clip in now.
I know I have to, don't I? Yeah. Chris hurt his hands.
I was hoping to move on
sync the
and
sound.
not acknowledge your betrayal in the podcast, but now I think you probably have to.
Yeah. How are you doing, Chris?
My hand hurts.
Yeah, I thought so.
But other than that, I'm all right.
Yeah, good. So it's an early one for us, but I watched it last night, but I assume Chris just watched The Library.
Yeah, man.
What number episode are we on? Like 12? 13?
10, I think.
10? Dear Lord.
Yeah, I think it's 10.
Okay.
I like to have it fresh. I don't like doing it the night before. You got to make notes and do your triv and stuff. So I get why you watch it the night before.
Yeah.
But I like to be fresh faced and yeah.
Yeah, I think if I didn't have to make notes or like do the triv, I probably would have made sure I watched it just before, for the sake of that. But yeah, and I had to watch it last night. It's okay. I mean, to be fair, as well, they're slightly different for me because I've seen them all multiple occasions before. So like, there isn't much chance of like anything like falling out of. Do you know what I mean? Because I've seen them so many times, so much of it is committed to memory anyway. I don't feel like there's much chance I'm gonna like forget a detail or anything like that. But I do understand for a first time viewing, for sure, you'd want to do it as soon as possible to the thing. Yeah, I don't know, where do you start with this? Or would you do a quick description? So this is the episode where the gang end up looking for dirt on the Fire Nation. They're looking specifically for a map initially, so because they have no idea where they're going to be going once they get to the Fire Nation, once Aang has mastered all the elements. This is a pretty good point, actually, from Sokka. So they go off in search of Wan Shitong's library, which is this mythic spirit library that contains information and tomes from across the world from all of time, and it's I mean, there's a chance it might not exist, but they have got a flying bison to search the desert it supposedly exists in, so they give it a crack. They stumble across it. The spirit is a spooky owl snake thing, which is pretty cool, and he's like, no, humans keep abusing this, the information in here to justify their own wars. I'm not interested in that. And they're like, no, we're just here for knowledge's sake. And the owl's like, yeah, right, but cool, go on. I'm only going to catch you in 5 minutes trying to find information on the Fire Nation, but whatever, in you go. So they go in, they find out about the darkest day in Fire Nation history, which is the day in which there is an eclipse, which has the reverse effect to what happened when the moon spirit was taken away for the water tribe. If the water tribes derive their power from the moon, the Fire Nation derive their power from things like the sun, and obviously Sozin's comet, which is the thing they're trying to do before. And if an eclipse happens, the Fire Nation's firebending fades the same way that the waterbenders waterbending did back at the Northern Water Tribe. So, with that information in hand, they escape. But as they're escaping, because obviously the owl catches them, clearly getting information on the Fire Nation. I don't know what they expected to happen. As they're escaping, Toph is outside trying to keep the library from sinking into the sand. And while that's happening, these sandbenders steal Appa, basically. And the episode ends with Aang asking, very upset, like, where's Appa? So yeah, big episode, big turning point for the season. What did you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great episode. It's, there's a lot of entertaining moments. Sokka and his knot and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, forgot about that.
Like,
okay, there you go. I did forget something.
So, well, yeah, but that would be. I'll be honest. If you put that in the recap, I'd be like, "Fucking hell, Dan! Like, you're taking these recaps a bit."
Oh no, I mean, I just feel like before we did the recap, I'd said like, I didn't need to watch it this morning. I remember the details. I've seen it so many times. And then I'm like, oh yes, Sokka did do a knot.
It's the end, isn't it? I mean, it's pretty like I'm barely over a dude dying by getting presumably suffocated by sand because he just loves his books a bit too damn much.
Yeah.
And that's his life goal and all of that stuff. Obviously, I say that flippantly. And then it's like, fucking hell, Appa's gone as well. Like, this is. It's quite a dark ending, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I always think of this season as being in sort of like 3 parts. Everything before now was sort of the first section that I always think of, and then this next sort of 5 or 6 episodes, I think sort of always feel like a very different season to me. And this is the turning point.
Yeah, but I think you live your life before and after Toph.
Yeah, there is a yeah.
You remember the days before you met the character, and you remember everything.
So we're in AT right now. It's do you remember what things were like, BT? I mean, come on.
I don't. I can't.
You can't. We're only in a post Toph world after Toph. But we don't talk about the before times. BT before Toph.
There is no other event in our lifetime that changed the world so succinctly and so massively that you could define time pre and post it quite like Toph's character arrival on Avatar. I can't think of a single thing.
No, I can't think of anything that's defined our generation either. I was saying this to someone the other day. It's so tragic. I might have even said this on a podcast, so you might have already heard this. But isn't it crazy that the pandemic has kind of like prematurely aged all the 20-year-olds? Like, I work with a lot of young people, and the pandemic has crushed them. like they're crushed and cynical about the world in a way you shouldn't be until your 30s. Does that make sense? Like, it's prematurely brought them to that point.
All the way along for this, like, I feel like, the technology is better for everyone, but I really do feel for like the older people that were just on their own. The younger people that were like, and it's, the young kids, that was probably more difficult for the parents. But there's like the teenage years where you just want to see your mates and like make out with people, like, gone. There's uni years where you're like literally trapped in halls, and then there's the people that have come home from uni and they're trying to build lives, but they're still living with their mum and dad, and then suddenly like they're living with their mum and dad. Like, the reality is, people like ourselves that are old enough to live on their own but don't also have young children were probably the sweet spot for this pandemic.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to say, but it's absolutely true. Yeah, I do. I feel for, as I've mentioned in the past, I work with a lot of young people. I do feel they've had a rough go of it. It's not been good for them. Like I said, they're prematurely cynical. they have the cynicism of a 30-something. But they're like 20-something. I'm like, you should be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I nearly said, what's wrong with you? But obviously, we know what's wrong.
I don't think, like, if we were in our second, third year of uni...
Oh, yeah.
I think I'd have been too paranoid, and my mum and dad would have been like, no, you're not doing that. It's a fucking stupid idea. Which means I'd have been at home, and I know my mum and dad. They'd be like, right, well, you should be doing something. And I'd be like, what is there to fucking do? Like, what do you want from me?
Yeah. Anyway, because I was gonna say, because that is definitely not Avatar.
No,
and I know we're.
So
I know
my point is,
I know we found ourselves on a lot of like these episodes tangenting, but I feel like maybe escapism should be a thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Fuck knows, in 10 weeks' time what the situation's going to be.
Yeah, that's a good point as well, because we're talking about this from like 11 weeks in the past from when it airs. Yeah. So yeah, who knows what it'll be in August.
So yeah, I just thought it was really kind of quite dark, but I quite liked that. Like, I thought it was quite intense at the end there. I was really struck by that dude being left to die. Like, I know you should probably concentrate on Appa, and it's almost like I think the show almost tried to do two dramatic things, and one suffers as a result.
Right.
Because you kind of feel like Aang's tears should also be for the dude they've just met that's literally drowning in sand. So, but maybe, I guess people die or get injured in the show all the time. I don't know, but that just something about that just kind of struck me.
It does stick out. I don't think I can recall any character deaths prior to this that were like specifically or explicitly, put on screen. Yeah, we should talk about the library guy, because he's quite a fun character as well. You do kind of like him. Like, he's obviously this big old like nerd, kind of a weirdo, but like there is something kind of likable about him, because it's quite a pure. His whole excitement for the library is such a pure sort of like expression of like just somebody being very passionate about a thing. He's not. He literally doesn't care that he sounds like a lunatic when he talks about this library. Like, and that's there's something quite likable about someone who's that honest about what they're interested in and what they're excited about, and like don't really seem to care that might mean they come across like a bit of a weirdo. Like, because again, he's an odd fellow, but it works. He makes it work because there's an honesty to it. So yeah, it is quite sad, that idea. But at the same time, I suppose the idea that he's like, he kind of chooses to. I think that's how they kind of get away with it. This idea that he chooses to sort of go down with the ship, as such. It's also like, it's not 100% exactly clear if the library is going to like fill up with sand, or if it's just vanishing like back to the spirit world with him in it. Like, I guess it's vague enough that you could go like, maybe he's just alive and gets to live in the library. Maybe you could kind of maybe, just because obviously it sinks down, but it was already half buried and not full of sand. And while some was obviously coming through as they were escaping, it wasn't like they were big waves of sand they were running from. They were mostly running from the spirit. Like, those spaces were still fairly open. I guess it's more just that he's basically now trapped there until he dies, even if it is. So it's either drown in sand, which is soon and deeply sad because he won't even get to enjoy the books that he stayed for, or it's that he got to live out his days just with the books, which is bittersweet in its own way, I guess.
Yeah, but Spirit, and it was quite haunting the way he was like, I'll stay here for eternity. But just to, I know it's a typical me thought here, Dan, but as far as I'm aware, the spirits don't need tinned food to rely on. So you say the end of his days. If there's no food or water down there, because the spirits don't need it.
That's a good point.
Then the end of his days are coming relatively quickly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Assuming the spirit even forgives him and doesn't think he was in, cahoots with the gang.
Yeah, that's another good point. Because so Wan Shi Tong obviously is pretty pissed.
I think he's dead, Dan, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, it's becoming more and more difficult to sort of suggest.
Fuck a packer. Like, who cares what he's doing?
Oh, poor Appa.
Appa, sorry, not a packer.
A packer. Yeah, I did think, is that what you said? But I thought maybe I misheard him. No, that's what you said. Fair enough.
No, that's not how you. What is it? Alpaca's a thing, isn't it? And
yeah.
Appa. Right. Yeah.
I think so.
Oh yeah, an alpaca's like a camel thing. Oh no, wait.
No, an alpaca is like I guess it's kind of like a sheep with a long neck.
It's similar and often confused with a llama. However, alpacas are notably smaller than llamas.
I've got a picture of me with an alpaca. True story.
Put that on the YouTube video.
Met yeah. cool. He had buck teeth. He looked quite funny.
People might accidentally think it's me, though. Like, why is Dan putting up a picture of him and Chris in this video?
There's very little chance of you being confused with this alpaca. Anyway,
we shouldn't record these early. Anyway,
we shouldn't. It's always a bad idea.
It is. I think, okay, so let's talk about Appa, though. But then I suppose that's an interesting thing, isn't it? And I do like it when this show does this, because this show is very good at being quite episodic.
Right.
And, you know, I like when stuff flows through, because I said, let's talk about Appa, and actually there's nothing more to say other than, interesting to see how that's going to play out. Because, do you know what I mean? The actual story is not resolved. The beat is not resolved. He's been taken. Aang's upset. But yeah, a good bit of drama. Hadn't ever thought, like, you know, they could make drama from Appa being stolen.
Well, yeah, because there's a few things that sort of leaves you wondering about, because if you think about it, like, it's not just his friend is gone and has been taken by people against his will. There's the other factor, which is they're stuck in a desert without their flying bison.
Yeah.
Like, it's also a practical problem. Like, I distinctly remember that ending being both, like, really emotionally fueled and also, you know, practical Dan being like, well, what are they going to do now? Like, Aang can sort of fly, I guess, on that thingy, but how long can he do that for? And what about the rest of them? There's a reason those sandbender folk travel on those, like, little boat things, you know. It's probably not efficient to just walk across that desert, you know, not without supplies and, you know, planning and knowing which direction you're going in. So there's definitely an element of it puts them into a precarious situation as well. But yeah, I think it's good. It's pretty impressive when just between the voice acting and the animation, you understand the emotional weight of Aang, you know, realizing that his buddy's gone. Like, they do it really, really well. Like, it's I don't know, it's because it's so short, but it's good because it's one line in response, right? It's like, where's Appa? Like, I think yes twice. That's it. You know, it's like, I don't know. It's just a short moment, but they did a really good job of making it feel very emotional, and obviously then cutting straight to credits, which is, as you pointed out, unlike this show, they generally are quite good at making these plots episodic. This is quite a. This is probably one of the first big cliffhangers in not a 2-part episode, because all the other times they've done this, it's been definitely a 2-part episode. You know, like the 2-parter from the middle of the previous season. So yeah, I don't know. It's a particularly good one, and I guess this is the mid-season. This probably what did count as the mid-season 2-part finale, probably. I know that this and the next one aired together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this one, the desert. This one and the next episode, which is just called The Desert, aired as a 1-hour special called Avatar: The Fury of Aang, which is a cool title.
Oh, that's a nice tease for.
It is a little. I thought you might like that. They aired as a 1-hour special, which is why I'm like kind of glad, because we're actually doing that thing where we watch them one after the other for listeners. Well, we're going to finish recording this, watch the next episode, and then come back and record again. So yeah, I think it's good that it's worked out that way. But I like these 2 episodes a lot. What did you think to the sort of sandbenders then, like as a premise? Like, so they essentially for anyone wondering, there is some debate about whether they're airbenders or earthbenders, but it is. I think most people feel like they're a form of earthbender. They're bending sand, which is a kind of earth, and they're spinning it around to create those vortexes. People just see when they were moving those ships, they sort of had like a vortex, almost like a tornado that they created. People think that means that they're wind airbenders, but I argue that they bend the sand to spin around. Then that creates, you know, that air sort of vortex that's almost like a mini tornado they use to push them forward.
Yeah, Aang's. We've seen instances where Aang has tricked people that he's a waterbender and an earthbender by moving the air around those things. I think For me, I can understand the thought, but for me, Toph literally describes sand not being as easy for her, but she can still see it to some degree, read it, because it's a form of earth, and she's an earthbender.
Yeah.
We have it. The actual thing being bent is the sand, so it's not the air around it. It's the sand, in the same way that, you know, it's
Right.
the water in the plants in the swamp episode. So I think that element's fairly clean cut. I think they actually did it really cleverly, because when he shoos them away at the beginning, when the professor guy shoos them away, I was like, oh, that's a cool, like, you know, it's almost like Star Wars. You know what I mean? They're giving the world a bit of color. They're giving it a bit, this part of the world, this town, this where they are, is, you know, being given specific people, monsters, whatever. I thought that was quite cool. And then when they came back in the end, I was like, oh, I'm not smart. Like, of course they've come back, and like,
yeah, I think it could have been either. That's what's kind of good about it. It's like it could have just been like a one-off, like give the location a bit of color by adding like a variety of different people that live there and have to interact, and like, you know, he's shooing them away the way that Obi-Wan shoos Jawas off the speeder or whatever. And I think that's a very good comparison. You know, the sand, and it sort of, I think that also the idea of like sand people of a sort also has an immediate Star Wars vibe. But it does it. Yeah, it just fills out the world a bit, and you wouldn't be surprised to never see them again. You know, it could just be a moment to just sort of give you an idea of the kinds of people that might live out in the desert. You know, and the idea that there are earthbenders that live out in the desert the way there are waterbenders that live in the swamp, it just fills out the world in general, you know, a lot more. So I think it's perfectly reasonable for someone to watch this episode and not expect to see them again. It's just kind of like a cool small idea. It doesn't need to be explored further, but bringing them back to have them kidnap Appa, which is also clever because that's what they were looking at the first time. They were admiring Appa for whatever reason. And let's be honest, it's not the first time that Appa's been taken this way. The swamp sort of waterbenders did the same thing. Appa is
that's true.
Is an interesting creature. You know, whether they want to eat him or sell him or use him to fly about in, like he's a well, they're extinct flying bison at this point, or well, maybe not extinct, but like as far as Aang is concerned, he and Appa are the last. You know,
yeah, and they even set it like that's all embedded, and you know that from your knowledge of the show, but it's even embedded into this episode when you have the professor, archaeologist, whatever he is, guy, right, you know, drooling over him and asking him about his stories and stuff like that. You know, you're reminding the writers of, you know, we say it all the time, but the writers of this are so clever. They're reminding the audience that Appa's a big deal.
Right, yeah, and again, you don't even realize it until the end why they've set any of that up. You know, it's so perfectly embedded into the storytelling that you don't see it as, it doesn't seem like a Chekhov's gun, right? It does. For those who don't know, we talked about it a lot. Chekhov's gun. If you introduce something into the script, so if in the first act someone finds a gun, it's probably going to be used in the third act. There are different versions of it, but you've probably seen a movie where someone's like, you know, noticed a fire extinguisher on the wall. You think, why is that in the movie? And you go, oh, he's probably going to bash someone around the head with that fire extinguisher later, or there's going to be a fire, he's going to use it. Like, you're setting it up for a reason. You wouldn't put it in your movie for any other reason. With this show, they find really clever ways to set things up without it feeling like deliberate setup. So the sand people thing, the sandbenders, feels like just world building. And the stuff about the professor being impressed by Appa just feels like, oh, he's impressed both because he understands Appa's rare, because he's a man of science, and he knows about these creatures and he knows how rare they are, but also he's also excited because the idea of a flying bison is going to help him find this library. So it's embedded into another thing, so it doesn't feel odd. It doesn't feel like setup. It feels like part of the story that we're currently in. It doesn't feel like there's something they're placing there for us to pick up later.
No, and it's really,
and that's what's clever about it.
And there's something about his character I want to pull on. But just to finish the Appa thing, it's also really dramatic. Like he the way he's almost screeching in pain when it's happening. One thing I really loved was the earthbenders bending the sand around their feet to secure them to the ground,
Right.
like to capture him. It was a really, really stark visual. Like,
yeah, and Toph had to
Really
do something.
effective.
Toph had to do something similar, didn't she? She sort of has to bend the sand to create like a platform to stand on to brace herself, so she can hold the library up as well. I thought that was also pretty cool.
And the drama of Toph's, you have, and I'm going to sound like you here because I'm praising the Toph character, but the notion of, we've shown her and Appa not really she struggles to talk to him. They don't really gel as a twosome. Like, it's a bit awkward, she's like, what's up?
Yeah.
But there's genuine pain in her face, when she says, I'm sorry, Appa, and she has to choose essentially between trying to save the four of them in the library and make sure they can get out, or trying to save him. And, it's really, you can feel the weight of that choice, in that character as she's trying to do both. It's really, like I say, man, the last 10 minutes of this shit is really dramatic.
Yeah, and I think as well, what's really leans into that is that you start by showing Toph being awkward with Appa, but then you cut back to them, 5 minutes later, and they're having a bit of a heart-to-heart. She's being honest with Appa about her blindness and how that's and how she can normally see so well, but out in the sand everything's fuzzy, and it's almost like it reminds her that she is like this person who basically doesn't behave like a blind person. It's almost easy to forget she's blind because her earthbending gives her such ability to understand the world around her the way a person with sight would. Even probably, actually, in fact, we've discovered more so. Like when she could see those ants climbing an anthill, the ant that Aang couldn't see. So she's got this enhanced ability, but out in the sand, it's sort of almost like it's a reminder that she is somebody that deals with a disability, and it's like, but both a powerful moment for Toph, where we see a softer side to her, where she's being nice to Appa, and she's like, everything seems fuzzy. Not that there's anything wrong with being fuzzy. It's also kind of sweet, which is the side of Toph we
definitely
haven't seen before, really. Toph is like, she is the epitome of someone who is tough and strong, and none of that namby-pamby stuff. So it was interesting to see that she sort of softened a bit around Appa, but not the gang. Like, she still got her guard up with Aang, Sokka, and Katara, but we saw a slightly softer side of it. So we understand that she did actually, in the end, make a connection with Appa. So when she says, I'm sorry, Appa, because she knows the situation she's in, and she understands he's being taken away and she can't help him, you feel it. And also the actress in question, I forget the actress's name off the top of my head, but I'll find it out in a minute. But her delivery of that line as well sells it so hard. That pain. It's brilliantly animated, obviously, as well. You can see the expression. But I do think her voice work really does make a big difference there to that line and how it's delivered. So yeah, it's a good one, as they say.
Yeah, it's great. A question on the professor dude.
Yeah.
Is it, he's got all this history knowledge. He's obsessed with Appa, the bison. He wants to get to the library, da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's nice that someone's doing something different. Is it not a little strange that he's focusing on Aang as an air nomad and not going, wait, if you're an airbender, you've got to be the Avatar, right?
Right.
Like, at no point, it just struck me as odd. Like, oh, well, if he's got this much knowledge, he must know that if he's an air nomad, that means he's the Avatar.
I think he knows, but that's just the least interesting thing to him. Because there's an Avatar in every generation. Like, that's not historically, to him,
then I almost wish they'd made more of that. Do you know what I mean? Because that could have been a really funny joke.
Right.
Aang, yeah, I'm the airbender. And he's like, who cares about that? What was your agricultural product or whatever he says?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, an air nomad. Well, the air nomads have died out. You're a fascinating piece of history. In yourself, you're from a dead culture. That's all that he was interested in. Because the Avatar is eternal, right? So theoretically, the Avatar reborn into each generation. Yeah, okay, cool, Avatar.
And even then, though, this will be the first Avatar he's met.
Oh, 100%.
I don't know.
Because there hasn't been that, Aang was
so
locked away for 100 years. So I guess that is also of interest, I suppose.
Yeah, you think he'd just give a little bit more of a
And it's
shit?
not like he doesn't know that, because there's a point a little bit later when Aang literally, when Sokka sort of pimps Aang out when they're trying to convince Wang Shitong to let them into the library. He's like, "This is Aang. He's the Avatar. He's the bridge between the spirit world." It's like a Sokka throwing Aang under the bus a little bit there. He
Yeah, that was
vouches
funny.
for us, but they have that conversation completely in front of the the scientist dude, whatever you want to call him, and he's just no reaction. Like, he doesn't at all react to the knowledge,
must
the
know.
information that Aang is the Avatar at all.
Yeah.
You're right.
Weird.
It does seem
But,
strange.
No, but I really liked his character. I thought he was a bit different. I really loved, like... I was very excited when the episode starts. I'm like, finally, Sokka, someone is like, guys, like, what's our plan?
Yeah.
Then obviously it's a really interesting thread, this notion of... So I'm right in saying this solar eclipse is due before the comet, yeah?
Correct. So that's what
Yeah.
Sokka says. So he basically goes back to look. This is another great moment for Sokka, by the way. So Sokka susses out that there'd been a solar eclipse in the past and it turned off the firebending, and that if there was another one between now and the comet, they could use it. And Aang, because he goes back and Aang's like, well, you can't check every day forever for the next eclipse. And Sokka's like, I don't need to check every day for the eclipse. I just need to check before the comet. So I just need to see if
which
there's
is weird,
one
'cause
pre-comet.
Am I right in saying we didn't see on screen Aang telling Katara and Sokka about the comet? I feel like we didn't see that, which is fine, but I just feel like because he was quite evasive when he first saw. They were like, is everything all right? And he was like, yeah, it's fine, and seemed to be keeping it to himself. But now they know. And like I say,
I feel like
I'm
we
fine
did,
with
but I
that.
can't remember it. It's a good
Yeah,
question.
I can't, which makes me think we didn't. But
Yeah, maybe. It's possible, actually, that it was just sort of, it happened off screen. I guess I'm trying to think. I'm wondering if there was like an episode that ended with them being like, "What's wrong?" and Aang basically turning with the intent to tell them about the comment and it ending there. Maybe like the idea of it being that that's the moment Aang tells them. But
maybe then.
maybe. I don't 100% remember either when they found out about the comment. Yeah, comment below, I guess, if you remember when they found out about the comment. I mean, we won't. It'll be 10 weeks till we see it, but I'll be curious to see. You could probably look it up in that time. That's a really good
but yeah,
question.
it's
So
great,
the
great soccer stuff, great notion, great
yeah,
idea.
I liked seeing him run back for that. I thought that was clever. Showed a level of its intelligence on soccer. It's like, it's not helpful for us to know. It's not actually that helpful for us to know an eclipse would dampen their firebending if we don't know when the next eclipse is. And a lunar chart like the one down there, a solar lunar chart like the one they've got down there, we're not likely to stumble across one of them again to find out when the sun and moon will sort of align like that. So I'm going to have to risk it and go back. Which, by the way, a little slight criticism of the episode is they have to check all these different days, and we saw how slow that thing was. You know, you punch in the dials, you pull the lever, the stuff all moves ahead of you. Lads, how long were they doing that? Toffs outside holding the library up.
I thought that. Yeah, definitely.
They kind of fade between the cuts to make it look like it's happening fast, but realistically, that cannot be happening fast. We saw how slow that thing was the first time they used it. Anyway, they checked enough days to eventually find an eclipse is happening between now and the comet, which they could potentially capitalize on as a way of sort of striking back at the Fire Nation. And it's interesting as well, obviously, we haven't even talked about this element of it yet, the Zhao of it all. So Admiral Zhao from the first season, the guy who knew where the moon and ocean spirits were, and he said he'd gotten that information from an ancient library he discovered. So this was all set up season 1, which is pretty amazing. Not only had he found the library, and this was the library, and this is where he'd got that information from, he then went into that library and burnt all the information regarding the Fire Nation to stop anyone using it against them. Obviously not completing there was a fragment of paper left that said the darkest day and had a date on it, which was enough to let Sokka work out the eclipse stuff. So Zhao, you left a very crucial piece of valuable information not burnt, but like the idea that he went in there, got what he needed, and then burnt any intel on themselves. One completely explains why Wang Shitong was like, no. So it's Wan Shitong. It was like, no more humans. The last one came in here and destroyed a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but it was funny because I was expecting, it was so expositional, the line. Like, let me see if I can find it. But he was literally like that firebender that came in and did this and then did this. And I was expecting, this is going to lead to them being like, oh shit, that was such and such, or that means this. And it doesn't. And it's like, well, in that case, why show the audience in flashbacks so we get that cool, oh, he's talking about this. We know what that's about. But don't. The actual dialogue itself doesn't need to be as expositional. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, it's quite on the nose. I remember that. And, the flashback is cool because it shows you it's Zhao and you understand what's going on a bit better. It's
but we could see that regardless. That's what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, he could have just literally said, the last human that I let in here. He didn't need to specifically say that last Fire Nation dude or whatever. However he phrases it. Yeah, you're right.
And obviously, we're, check your map, Dan. We're in nitpick corner. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I just thought it was weird.
I've just checked my map, Chris, and we are indeed nitpick corner.
Yeah. I'm getting trying to find the line now. But no, I loved that link. That was very clever.
Yeah.
I actually the notion of it I think is great. If we're going to see it in flashbacks, I'm not sure he needed to be. Oh, here we go. Right, hold on. It's coming up. It's coming up, Dan. There we go. Like that firebender who came to this place a few years ago. Hold on. Looking to destroy his enemy. It's just a bit.
Yeah.
To me, that would make them go, huh. I wonder what that's about.
Yeah, surely they would have more questions because they don't know.
Even save time,
they don't know.
because
They don't know what we know about Zhao because Zhao talked about the library to Iroh, and we heard that conversation as an audience, but they didn't know that. So I would have been like, wait, what firebender came here? Which one?
You could even because the line before is humans only bother learning things to get the edge on other humans. Show that same flashback over that line. That will make the audience go, oh, he's talking about Zhao. Yeah.
And then when they find the burnt stuff later, you can then put it together. If you've not figured it out from that, somehow, you'll see all the burnt stuff and know that the last human that came through was Fire Nation.
Yeah, but again, can't stress enough. We're, this is pure nitpicks, baby.
We'll get to a section that's becoming a regular feature on this podcast, Chris, which is Dan says things he thought were funny. This is an episode that I think is actually really underrated for its comedy. It's never thought of, I don't think, or I don't ever see it really being discussed as a comedy episode. But it's actually one of my favorites in terms of how many great jokes this has in it. I would argue one of my favorite jokes from the entire show is in this episode. And that is when they're on Appa looking for the library, and Toph goes, "There it is," and they all turn around, and she's like, "It's what it'll sound like when one of you spots it." And then she rushes her hand in front of her eyes to remind them that she's blind. It's such a good joke.
There were a couple of Toph. Let's not forget, peeps. Toph is blind moments this week. There was that, and then there was. Aren't you coming with us? I've held a book. It's not really for me.
Yes. I think she's I've held books before. They don't really do it for me, which is a great way to phrase it. It's also a great way to fries it, whatever that means. So and I also really enjoyed as well just little details, like when the professor is taking them through his findings. Aang has bought one of those drinks, and he's just sucking it through a straw from that sort of iced coconut. It's just. That straw sound is happening the entire time the professor is talking. It's just really funny. I also enjoyed foxy knowledge seekers and Sokka being like, "Oh, attractive knowledge seekers." No, they're literally foxes. That was funny. And then Aang describing himself as training his arrow off right up top. He's been training his arrow off. What? This episode is. Oh, and also the other great one, when they're talking about all choosing vacation spots, and Toph's like, "Hey, we haven't chosen my vacation spot yet," and Sokka says, "You got to work here a little longer before you qualify for vacation time." It's like, it's so consistently funny. And when the owl says to Sucker, "You're not very bright, are you?" Like, honestly, I could go through like the entire episode. Oh, one last one in the Dan names things he found funny corner. The buttresses thing. When the professor describes the ornate buttresses, and they're all giggling because essentially the word "butt," and you just suddenly reminded, oh yeah, they're all children. Which is it's a fun joke and also just a nice reminder that we are dealing with children in this show.
When he's like, it's just really funny when he's like, what's the situation? And they're just like, oh, we just really like architecture or whatever it is. Like you say, I was struck by exactly the same thing. Just this really nice, like, oh yeah, they are kids, aren't they?
Yeah. It's Sucker pointing at the fox and being like, he's with the owl. Which I just thought was great too. So many great moments. Yeah, this episode is totally underrated for its comedy. There are like an absolute boatload of genuinely hilarious moments. And again, that Toph one particularly stands out as one of my favorite jokes from the whole show. It's just because I like Toph not feeling too precious about her condition to make like jokes about it. Like,
sense.
I'm blind. Like, I don't care. Like, it's I'm totally okay to laugh about that. It's funny. Like, it can be funny. There are limitations, but like I can absolutely laugh about it. It's actually quite a good. What's sort of like? It's like a good. She's taking a good sort of positive mental attitude about it because she's willing to make jokes about it. She's not too precious or sensitive about the area, which is it's absolutely fine. It's how I live and it's what I have to live with. But it's like I'm okay to make jokes about it. It doesn't really matter. To me, I'm not explaining myself very well. I like the flippancy in which Toph approaches it because it suggests a certain level of acceptance of herself, and that's like really important. I think just in general, to accept you for yourself. Yeah. And the fact that Toph can make those jokes shows us that she's gotten to that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Truth?
Well, one last little note or two before I get to the truth, just very quickly. Appa still hates going underground from their time in the secret tunnel from earlier episode.
I just like that. That was nice.
The little, just a tiny little bit of like character continuity. Appa don't like being underground. If he'd have come down there, one, they couldn't have nicked him, obviously, that's what they were setting up, but also it makes sense that they left him up top. They've already established like 10 episodes ago why, and that's pretty cool. I thought the escape itself was really cool action sequence, the sinking library, them running around, the spirit chasing them with his big long snake neck, pretty neat. Thought that was a cool idea. The design in general on Wan Shi Tong is amazing. This weird snake owl creature, his voice, everything. I think he's cool. I think he's super creepy, but on purpose. Nadia just finds him creepy. She doesn't like him. He weirds her out. She doesn't like his whole vibe. But I always think like that's kind of like the point, and I kind of enjoy that about it. I think it's good. Any other details I noted down? These are all things we've talked about. We talked about Zhao. Sorry. Oh yeah, I have one. Hey Chris, you want to pull out your GPS and get us back to Nitpick Corner?
Oh yeah, mate. Hold on. Yep, we're there. Actually mind that, mate. Actually fucking held my hand out like I was looking at a GPS and tracked the invisible route with my eyes and then went, oh, good. For no one. That was for no one's benefit, Dan. Carry on.
Yeah, because no one could see you. All you had to do was just pause.
That's the kind of commitment
I appreciate
we're putting in.
I appreciate your commitment and your space work.
Thank you. Thank you, mate.
I do. The fox, the first one. How well timed is that? So they get to this little tower thing sticking out the sand, and they're all like, well, this ain't the library. Off we go. And then they see the fox run into it. And that's when they go, oh, maybe it's the top of the library. That to me is honestly like, in a TV show and they're like, what are we going to do for money? And then on the news it's like, special bulletin, you can earn money by, like, they're doing a competition this week, a cooking competition in your local town. It's like, how convenient of that information to have appeared at this exact moment. I felt like the fox showing up in that exact moment was a bit like that. What are the odds?
Don't criticise Keenan and Kel, Dan. Calm it down. There's a line. Not only that, it's even worse than that because the fox is like carrying a scroll, as if the notion is that, it started to sink. Scrolls are everywhere, so the fox was out searching for one and returned, especially when you could have very conceivably just had Sokka realizing. Now, it sets up the fox people early, I suppose, but like you could have just had Sokka look at the photo and put it together and be like,
they're described as foxy knowledge seekers. They're described as the ones that go out and acquire the various tomes that make up the library. But what are the odds that there was one coming back at the exact moment they were outside? Especially when you could have easily had Sokka just look at the picture and go, actually, doesn't that look like the top of the library?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Which would have, reinforced Sokka's sort of like... Because, the owl says, you're not very bright, are you, to Sokka? But I think in actuality, like, Sokka has proven to be one of the smartest, like, on many occasions.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. We haven't talked about Aang's little orchestra at the beginning with the little gopher things, whatever it was. Back to dicking about for Aang, start of this episode.
Yeah, but I thought actually I didn't mind that because they kind of covered it. They were like, they literally in the conversation with Sokka, he was, voicing that opinion.
Right, exactly.
And they were like, well, you know what, we're training every day, we're doing all we can at the moment. Like you need to have your mind take a little break. Sure. So I actually, I quite like that.
Yeah, no, that wasn't a nitpick so much as an observation. Just Aang dicking about again.
Well, put your observations back in their box, Dan.
Yeah. Well, I'll wait till we're out of nitpick corner. I think
we're out. We're out. We're out.
Yeah. Cool. I think we've cut all my details. Should we get to the? Sorry.
Trip.
One last thing I wanted to point out. I really love the line from Wan Shi Tong. You think you're the first to think your war is justified. I thought that was such a great line. The idea that they're like, yeah, but the Fire Nation are the bad guys. He's like, yeah, that's what they all say. The Fire Nation see you as the bad guys. You're in the way of their steamroller of progress. Like, wars are wars. Like, I'm not getting involved, and you can't sort of paint yourselves as the heroes. If you can if you want, but it doesn't matter to me. As a being that's lived for, eternity or whatever, as a spirit, I've seen it all come and go, and you're justifying seeking information that you're going to use to attack essentially someone else. As far as I'm concerned, that's no different to the Fire Nation. I just thought that was really cool.
It's a really cool idea, isn't it?
Yeah, and I just thought that was a really that line stood out to me. Anyway, very quickly, let's do the trip. There's not a huge amount of trip.
Give me the trip, boy.
So the library is
let's trip it up.
The library is a mix of the Taj Mahal and let's see if I can get this right. The Hagia Sophia, which is another building, I believe, in India that's very beautiful and ornate.
Should we do it again without it sounding like you're an over-enthusiastic worker at a retail shop? Hey! Just
the Hagia Sophia.
Hey!
That's how it's
to do that. I won't name it, but
I did a Google for the phonetic pronunciation, and I've been working off that. I put the effort in. That's what it says.
We're all very grateful for it. It just reminded me of I won't name the chain. It should be fairly obvious by the description of the shop. But I worked in a place that sold bears, and you helped. You built the bears for people, and it was very much that American approach.
Some would describe it as some sort of maybe a workshop.
Well, that's you could describe it that way too. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the American kind of shops, you had to someone came in, someone's duty was to stand there. I don't know if it's still the case now. Obviously, I'm not naming the shop. Who knows? But you had to stand there and be like, "Hey, hi!" It was literally someone's role was to position by the door and be the greeter. And just the way you were like, "Hey," reminded me of that.
It's funny because that is such an American thing. Like, to American listeners of this podcast, they'll be like, "Yeah, having a greeter is standard for a store." But in the it's worth noting in the UK, we do not waste money on that. You are not being greeted walking into any store in the UK.
The till could be next to the door, and there could be no one else in the shop, and the person on the cash register could just be stood there, and I still wouldn't necessarily expect to be greeted hello when I walked in.
Not at all. No, that's standard in the UK. We don't want extra human interaction. What are you talking about? Get out of my face. That's funny.
Can I tell you quickly, because you're just super quick, because you'll be amused by it.
Yeah.
I really, you could tell that someone in a shop the other day thought I was a lunatic. I say in the shop, it was outside. It was Specsavers. You wait outside. You da. So the guy appeared, and I went, I think I need to book an eye test, and also, can you get the little nose things? I don't know what they're called, but the ridges that sit to stop the metal just digging into your nose.
Yep.
Yeah?
I don't know what they're called either, but yes, I know the things.
So those things. They fell off months ago. Like, I've literally been, like, ripping my nose to shred with my glasses. We were in town anyway for the dentist. Side note, new dentist. Took way too much interest in my teeth as far as I'm concerned, but anyway. So I'm waiting outside Specsavers. The guy goes in, he returns, he's added the nose ridges, and he went, I've added them, but your glasses are really wide, because like the whatever they are, the hooks, the things that go around your ears, they're like really wide. And I literally completely nonchalantly just went, oh yeah, don't worry about that, mate. I've got a massive head. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, look. And I put them on, and he was kind of like, oh, okay. I was like, that guy was not impressed. Anyway,
I think he just thought you'd found a real problem with your glasses, and you were like, nah, mate, got a big head, and just slapped him on.
Nah, mate, massive forehead. Don't worry about it.
That's okay.
Sorry, you continue with the triv. Triv it up.
So the pictures on the dial are from the Chinese zodiac, which is obviously for choosing the year. The Chinese zodiac obviously related to certain months and stuff. So there you go. So that's when they were doing the dates and stuff on that big sundial device thing. The book that the professor stumbled upon during his attempt to escape is actually identical to the book he gave the spirit in order to gain access to the library. So you could either see that as an animation error where they just chose the same asset, or you could see that as a small. The joke being, if I'm getting out of here, I'll at least bring my bloody book back with me. Like, I liked that book. Quite like that idea myself, but
yeah,
anyway.
I like that.
Wan Shitong represents himself as either a barn owl or a serpent-like creature, which are both actually animals sort of used as symbols for knowledge in different cultures in the real world. Although, even though the owl is a traditional symbol of wisdom by many cultures, actually, as an animal, they're actually they're not very intelligent. they're very instinct based, just hunt, sleep. Like they're not actually that clever, despite particularly I think Western society, the owl is often seen as like being connected to books and intelligence and stuff. There is a weird connotation there, but it's just, I don't know, it's just a weird thing that humans have applied to owls and isn't actually reflective of how smart they are at all. And then final piece of trivia, singer-songwriter Dolly Parton wrote a song and placed it in a locked box displayed in Dollywood that is not to be opened or heard until 2045 to mark the 30 years of Dollywood opening. It's actually on a CD inside that locked box, and she's actually very helpfully included a CD player in case CD players aren't available in 2045.
You imagine how gutted you'd be if plugs were obsolete by then.
Clogs?
You know what I mean? Plugs.
Oh,
plugs. No one could plug in the CD
yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe the power source.
There's all sorts of. There's like Prince has his vault of just unaired music videos and songs, and isn't there a movie? Didn't some director
Yeah, so Kevin Smith made a movie for Prince that's just in a vault.
Kevin Smith? No, Kevin Smith didn't do that, did he?
Yeah, he told the story on one of his evenings with. It's like big part of one of his.
Oh no! Sorry, no. So yes, Kevin Smith did the Prince thing. I thought you were naming Kevin Smith as the director that just like made a movie never to be seen, and I was like, fucking Kevin Smith wants everything he's done to be seen.
No, yeah. So Kevin Smith made a movie for Prince. That's one of the ways in which people know publicly that Prince has this big library of stuff he's made that no one will ever see.
and that bit in complete form, even if you're not a fan of Kevin Smith, that's on YouTube as an isolated bit. Like Kevin Smith talks about Prince.
Yeah, it's funny.
And it's brilliant.
It's incredible. It's his experience being flown out to Prince and like filming this stuff, and then him being at the end of like a weird couple of weeks worth of work. He's paid for his work. He's like, so when's this going to be coming out? And his Prince's people are just like, oh no, it's never coming out. It's going in Prince's vault. Like, so weird. Anyway, so the Dolly Parton one I really like. I love that Dolly Parton was like thoughtful enough. 2045, she's like, they might not have a CD player. I'll make sure that I put one in the box.
But that would suggest as well it's about Dollywood. So do you imagine the song's just like, welcome to Dollywood, Dollywood is here? Like, do you know what I mean?
I mean,
like,
it probably is that, isn't it? I mean, she's very prolific. She's written a lot of songs. It's probably not going to be. It won't be a masterpiece. It'll be one of the 10,000 songs she's written.
Yeah,
it won't be like her greatest song, but yeah, I love. By the way, this week, Chris, you've resigned to the triv. You've just gone. Dan's going to say a piece of triv that's not related to Avatar, and I'm just going to go with it.
I don't know what you mean, Dan. Triv's triv, isn't it? You've been saying that. Well, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
You got me. Very good. Very, very good. We have a very quick, and I'll make this very quick, question. From a listener on the Patreon, and it's quick for me because I didn't watch one of them because I kind of got a vibe of it and didn't like it, and I don't think Chris watched either, so this one will be quick just by default. Jackie asks, Bad Influence or Games Master? Now, I didn't like Bad Influence. I saw a few minutes of it and thought it was snarky in a way I didn't enjoy, and I liked Games Master. You're gonna talk about games, review games. You're gonna big guy in a sort of half animated head all the way. It's weird.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I will say if it's a choice between Bad Neighbours or Games Night, then I'd probably pick Games Night. I think Bad Neighbours relies a little bit too much on the slapstick, whereas Games Night is a good combination of things and actually a really strong comedy film.
I like it. I like that you just decided to answer a different question, which I like.
Well, I have no context. I don't even know what those other two things are.
So
it's a great question.
They were both sort of like TV shows that, like in the early era of like games becoming very popular. They were like kids' TV shows that sort of focused on essentially shilling games, but they were reviewing them and talking about them. And Games Master had this kind of like, it was like this kind of this fictional science fiction character called the Games Master that was this like robot man from the future that helped review games. And it was just, and then there was a magazine. It was like NME but for video games called Games Master, and he was like the logo and icon for it, and it was weird. Google Games Master and look at this weird old man in a half metal head thing. He looks like something from Doctor Who. Really bizarre.
I should do that now, Dan.
Yeah, I want Chris's opinion to what Games Master looks like.
Oh, wow.
It's freaky, right? It's like a real man, but in like an animated... Yeah.
Yeah, that is creepy. This image makes me pleased that Power Rangers didn't have much money. Do you know what I mean? With a bit more money, this is what Zordon would have looked like, and the show would not have been a success.
Yeah. Whereas Bad Influence, which was the ITV sort of one, was just less about video games, I suppose. Though it was more like just technology and things in general, forward. But it was just it was like snarky but dry. I didn't like it as much. No, give me a big old weird old man head, science fiction cartoon background.
What would you say to Bad Neighbours, which, to clarify, it was the UK title for Neighbours, just US, the Seth Rogen, Zac Efron comedy. What's your opinion on Bad Neighbours v Games Night?
I know, I agree with you. I think both are good, but I think there's more depth to one than the other. Yeah. I think the other one. I think Bad Neighbours is like fun, but like frivolous, whereas I feel like Game Night actually has a bit more.
Yeah.
To it.
The only problem with Games Night is it has like 5 endings.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I think I don't think I saw that originally. That was one of those ones that I got told was good later on, having dismissed it at the box office, and then I think I saw it on like the flight to Japan.
Yeah, no, it's worth it.
So,
yeah,
so I might have to
we
dig it
watched
out again because the ones on the flights are usually heavily edited, aren't they? So I've probably missed
possibly.
some gags.
Yeah, possibly. There
Anyway,
you go.
So there you go. So that's everything for this week. Of course, you can get us in all the usual places. Obviously, go support Raphodraws. Instagram.com/Raphodraws or launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws to look at the various like Twitter and Tumblr and YouTube channel for Rapho, who has done the key piece of art for this podcast. So that apple at sunset sort of image that you see when you put the name of this podcast into like iTunes or whatever, and it's part of the imagery we use for the podcast itself. Not the thumbnails, that were obviously much shitter. Those are made by me. But yeah, obviously go support Rapho in any way you can. You can get us in all the usual places if you want to support us. Ask a question like the Patreon did that we just talked about just then. You can do it. That was from Jackie. Did I say that? It was from. I might not have named Jackie. Sorry, Jackie. It was from Jackie. It was one of Jackie's famous this or that's. I think that's the last one of Jackie's this or that's. So we've got. So we have got another question from Jackie for a future episode, but we'll come back to that because I've got a couple lined up for the next few.
Okay, cool.
Yes, if you want to ask a Patreon question like Jackie has, you can go to patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. And you can, give as little as $1 a month, which gives you access to episodes of this 1 week early on a special Patreon RSS feed. This and Rewind reviews, and also the ability to sort of ask us a question that will give you a little shout out at the end. Again, as little as $1 a month. Otherwise, you can head over to the YouTube channel and support us there by liking and subscribing, things like that. You can do it also on the podcast app of your choice. If you wish to just support us, there's usually a review service or system built into the podcast app, so make sure that you do that if you can. That is the free way in which you can support our rambling. But I think otherwise that is everything. Oh yeah, you can get us on Twitter. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham. You can send us some of your thoughts there. You can also email us, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. And of course, you can check out our main general television podcast, Nothing But Static, where we review new TV and do the news. We talk about TV news every week. It's all right.
Yeah, man.
Oh, sorry, not every week. Every 2 weeks. I'm so used to this being weekly. So yeah, we never actually promote that, despite it being like our main podcast. It's a bit weird. We should talk about it more than we currently do.
That's because, but it's because it's difficult to when we literally have no idea what we would have talked about in the last episode.
Yeah, because we record that one week to week, or every 2 weeks, I should say. So we can't promote because this is going out in August, and for us it's still May.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know what we'll have talked about recently for you guys to watch. But you can, if you go back a couple of months, you can hear us talk about. You can hear me hate a show called Intergalactic. That's fun.
And he really did hate it.
I don't remember the last time I was that angry about a show being bad.
Friends with money or whatever it was called.
Friends with Better Lives. Fuck that.
Friends with Better Lives. That was
awful piece of television. Anyway, so thanks very much for watching, everyone. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you again next week when we sit down to discuss the desert. The desert. I said it weird because I was trying not to say dessert. Then it came out the desert.
If anything, it sounded more like dessert than desert.
Yeah, it did.
Dad's been disappointed in a restaurant so many times when they've just brought him a big bowl of sand. Fucking hell. I wanted sticky toffee pudding. Bye.
Bye.